Welcome to another episode of Unleashing the Future of Work. Today, I am here with a special guest, Naomi Haile, who is a community builder, public speaker, and the host of the Power of Why podcast, Shout Out to Why, where she brings listeners into the lives of purpose-driven leaders to talk about their impact and work. Naomi is also the co-founder of Inclusively, an organization that prepares millennial professionals of color to take their seat at the table. Naomi's conviction is to ensure that diversity of thought is embraced and that the work environments of the future are incredibly more inclusive. So I'm excited because we're going to dive deep on the future of work, but also mentorship and areas such as mental health and why it's so important in this generation moving forward. Now, without further ado, I would love to have Naomi come on the show. Hey, Naomi.
Hey, Tim. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat with you.
Thank you for finding time. I'm excited that you're here. How are you doing with everything going on in the world?
It's a lot.
Yeah.
I think, for one, just checking in with all of my loved ones, making sure that all my peers around the world are doing okay, because I think there's so much uncertainty right now. And last week, especially, like the past week, has been heavy, but just making sure that we're protecting our hearts and what we consume, and all of that is just really important right now. So
I love that. I love that. That's something I'm always very mindful of. Are you consuming the right information? And is it information that's actually edifying, good for your soul, as well as good for your mental health? If you're tuning in right now from Ontario, Naomi, you're from Ontario, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm in Ottawa right now, yes.
Yeah. If you're tuning right now from Ottawa, show us some love, shout us out, or anywhere else in the world. Let us know so we can comment, shout you out, and be part of the discussion that Naomi and I are having. So, Naomi, I would love for you to share a little bit more about your background and your career, because you're pretty amazing. You're this dynamic community builder, but you also do quite a lot in terms of content creation on LinkedIn and really just helping the youth and the workforce embrace more diversity and think about the working world from an inclusive lens. So what led you to doing the work that you do now?
I think, a big part of it, especially looking back into, my parents' history and where they come from before they even came to Canada, I think that plays such a huge role in my fortitude, but also the way that I approach work and life. So my parents came from a northern part of Ethiopia called Tigray. Wow. And people from Tigray are known to be warriors, survivors, and that just Ethiopia in general has been through a lot over the years. And so for them coming here with that, mindset and just dedication to make sure that their kids, myself and my brother, had the best possible future, was really important. And so in Tigray, they only make up 4% of the Ethiopian population. And just the power of community, the power of sticking together is almost in our blood. And so I think that was definitely a huge part of my commitment to really support Ethiopian youth here in Ottawa, and also, Black people in general. So yeah, especially just where my parents came from, but also my desire to want to build community networks and build as we climb, right? And that this is not a zero-sum game, that there is enough for everyone. And in fact, our life is richer and sweeter when we're supporting other people. So that's a little bit about my background. Personally. Professionally, I work in the international compliance space here in Ottawa. And when I'm not there full time, I started a podcast called The Power of Why, which Tim has been on.
And it was such an honor. It was so awesome.
It was amazing, and it's so nice to hear from people like you who are so driven in your purpose, and you understand the work that the why behind the work that you're doing. So to have more of those types of conversations, that's why I really started The Power of Why. Yeah.
So let me ask you, right? Because with the work that you're currently doing right now, professionally, did you know exactly what you wanted to do in your career, or did you just kind of fall into it?
Like when I was in university specifically?
Yeah.
I had no idea. No idea. And I think there was a lot of anxiety around not having the answers,
Mm.
and not having necessarily a path that I could follow step by step. But some of the activities that I did in university for any of the students, in the broadcast, was the importance of just grabbing coffees with
Yeah.
people in so many different areas, so many different industries that, come to think of it, I didn't even know existed when I was in first year university. And so I think trying new things, questioning,
Mm.
um, being curious, and just asking those questions around, like, what can work potentially look like? Where do my gifts align? And all these things really helped with trying to figure out or iron out what was meant for me. Yeah.
Yeah. So did
And
you
I
go
don't
through?
think I have it figured out either.
Yeah, I
I
think
feel
we're
like I'm
always
still
figuring it out.
constantly,
Yeah, no,
yeah.
you're constantly learning, you're constantly evolving, getting better. I don't think
Yeah.
but I think for you, was there a moment where you realized, okay, these are my skills, these are my expertise, and my gift for the world, and this is how I can put them to use? What was that moment for you?
I can't say there was one moment in particular,
Yeah.
but I think some of the activities that helped to clarify was to be still,
Yeah.
to, like, I'm quite an introvert, so it's just spending a lot of time alone and sitting in that silence and thinking back to the memories and the moments where I did feel the most fulfilled and the most energized. And that was, there are always patterns, and I
Hmm.
think for me it was when I was around people, when I was around community, when I was interviewing people about, fulfillment and what keeps them going, and understanding what all of those challenges were on their journey, and solving problems, building with really creative people. Like, all of these
Yeah.
were things that I wanted to embed, regardless of what role I was in. And so there wasn't a particular moment, but moments that helped clarify for sure.
Yeah. So for you, let's dive deep into, kind of work-life dynamics, right? Because I think one of the
Mm,
hardest things for people to do this in this day and age, with so
yeah.
much going on, and COVID-19 did not make it easier for people, is managing,
Mm,
creating that work-life harmony, right? So
mm.
I want to ask you, how does Naomi do that in her life?
I really appreciate that you use the word harmony in this case,
Yeah.
because I think we like to think, especially when we're talking about this subject, this work-life balance. And the way that I see life is not necessarily work is 50% and my personal life is
Mm.
50%. Work is part of our lives, right?
Mm.
And it's a piece. It is. I don't think it makes up half of my life, but understanding the nuances in terms of health, and really making sure that I was investing in exercise and eating properly.
Mm.
Um, my relationships in my life. So my relationship with my family, my relationship with my parents, my friends, colleagues. There are so many more components than just work and life
Yeah.
that I think when you're trying to juggle both, it doesn't do ourselves justice. And for me particularly, what I will always come back to self-awareness,
Mm.
especially when it comes to creating or discovering what meaning means for you in your life
Yeah.
particularly. So for me, that has been such an incredible way to guide how I make decisions, and
Mm.
whether I would say yes to a promotion, whether I'd say yes to a transition internally. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
No, that's powerful. That's powerful. I think, there's this new way of thinking about
Hmm.
work that, is widely being adopted. I don't think we're just only seeing it in, the next generation of talent, or
Hmm.
our generation in terms of
Yeah.
millennials. We're also seeing it happen in the enterprise with baby boomers, Gen X. Because, I mean, now more than ever, I actually had an amazing person on the podcast yesterday. And what she was talking about was, people need to take control of their careers, and that's something I was like, yes, that's something I've been sharing with the world for like years now.
Yeah.
But now more than ever, you see that, when things happen, businesses have to either invest in automation or
Hmm.
rethink how they think about their workforce, which means we need to move into a future where people are more obligated to take control of their careers, right? And they're more
Hmm.
incentivized to take control of their careers, and actually maybe divest their expertise and use that maybe as a beacon to make money or, find other opportunities, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, so I love how you're saying your work is your life, because now I think we're living in this culture where you design your work around your life. You don't design your life around your work.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah.
It's critical because otherwise, and even when we talk about fulfillment in work too, and the importance of tapping into that authentic self, there's so much internal conflict that happens
Mm-hmm.
when we don't find that harmony, right? Between what we're doing for 8 hours a day, 8, 9, 10 hours a day, versus what our actual personal beliefs are too. So yeah, I completely
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So let me talk to you a little bit more about mental health, right? I know this is a
Yeah.
passion area for you. How did you become passionate about mental health? What does it mean for you to have, you know, mental harmony in your work life? I would love to hear.
Mm-hmm. I think, Tim, during our last conversation,
Mm.
um, that was a particularly hard time with, the school that I attended, so at the University of Ottawa. I believe it was February of this year. Um, there was a suicide on campus, and it wasn't the first one. Like between, if we look at the past year, so starting from like January, February 2019 up until now, there have been several incidents, and
Wow.
that just had me trying to understand, what types of infrastructure and support is available for students and then also employees within a company, right?
Mm.
And there comes a time in these situations where people become so overwhelmed that they almost lose a sense of hope
Yeah.
that things will get better.
Yeah.
Um, and in those situations, I started having conversations with people, with my peers and my friends to understand like what kinds of conversations do we need to be having with our loved ones, so that we can understand where they're at. Do you know what I mean? If they're going through a
Mm.
difficult time, I want to know when you're going through it so that we can support each other and that you know that you're not alone. So that was a huge moment that got me thinking about mental health, but
Wow.
also experiencing burnout. Like it was 2 years ago in 2018 where I I couldn't get up from bed. I
Wow.
was overexhausted, and um, when I was coming out of the bathroom, I collapsed. I fell,
Wow.
and I knew it was happening as it was happening, but I had no control over my limbs, um, and that just it was such a wake up moment for me of understanding what my breaking point was and what exactly I have on my plate and understanding what my priorities are to say this type of behavior and the decisions that I've made is not working. And your body will tell you. And it told me, and I had to
Yeah.
listen, right? And so I think that definitely made me more aware of what is on my plate, what am I juggling, does this need
Yeah.
to be here in my life right now, and if it
Mm.
doesn't, what are the decisions that I need to make to adjust and listen to my health first, because
Wow.
there's no way that I could pour into my community if my cup is empty. And so if I wanted to be of greater service to other people, I needed to take care of my health and my well-being. So yeah, I think those were definitely the two big things that happened for me to take this conversation seriously. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's so powerful too, right? Because you have to know your limit in terms of physically, and without you, you can't do the work that you love, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
tell that to my brother and my co-founder Taban every time. I tell him, without we wouldn't be if God wouldn't exist if it wasn't for us, right? So we have to make
Mm,
sure that we
yeah.
take care of ourselves more than ever and do whatever we can to survive and thrive. And
Mm-hmm.
God will continue. And I think, any entrepreneur, any leader, that you can't be your best if you aren't mentally, physically, spiritually, and
Yeah.
really just, well integrated as well. Right. And you start, leadership becomes harder when you're not taking care of yourself because you can't effectively take care of
100%.
other people. I
Yeah.
thank you so much, Naomi, for really opening up and sharing that with us. And I want to show love to Ryan, who is saying, Tim and Naomi, so good. We've brought in a doctor and director of mental health for our startup. All of us are
Mm.
under so much pressure, and it's so important we invest into team. Here's the thing. The entire team was pumped and wanted it. How do you feel about that, Naomi? Startups
Wow.
investing in mental health?
This is essential.
Yeah.
And I think it's too late to be thinking about it once you've reached a breaking point. I feel like it's harder to course correct, right? But this proactive effort is incredible. Is incredible. What are you noticing, Ryan? If you can respond in the comments of how this is really impacting your team and the team dynamics.
Yeah, Ryan, let us know. Let us know. So shout out to Donna who's saying that is a huge step when you learn that lesson of what is your physical limit. And she is also saying your health is your wealth. Preach it, Donna. Your health is your wealth. Donna, let us know what are some of your thoughts on how people can continue to sustain a healthy work-life balance, right? Because now, in today's age, we have people working from home and then they're taking care of their families. And at the same time, they're trying to manage like 2 to 3 projects, right?
Yeah.
And some of them may have bad bosses. What are some things people can do and your thoughts, Donna, to just sustain? So,
Mm-hmm.
Naomi, continue on with the conversation. I want to talk to you a little bit more about the future of work and mentorship. I want to
Mm-hmm.
ask you, how do you see mentorship changing in the future of work?
So my views on mentorship has changed, especially this past 2 weeks.
Yeah.
We've my co-founder and I, we hosted a couple sessions with the Ottawa Public Library, so in our city. And the last session that we're going to be doing in a couple weeks is around building relationships.
Oh, cool.
And it's amazing and it's critical. It's super important. And through doing research around, what are the components of building up healthy relationships, all of this, I came across, and I'm such a proponent of building transformational relationships instead of transactional. And
Oh my God,
so,
I love that because there's so many people who are very transactional. It's just a moment, and
yeah,
you never meet them again.
yeah. And understanding those two types of relationships, I think for me, helped me clarify how I see mentorship, right? Because transactional relationships, as you mentioned, they're functional.
They're very
They
functional.
exist like in that moment to exchange a product or service.
Hmm.
And when that service or product is over and it's been fulfilled, that relationship is over, right? But this in the traditional model of mentorship, where the way that I see it, that the person with the most experience is pouring into the mentee, that for me seems really transactional, right? Maybe the mentee reached out to this individual to answer one specific question, and that's great. I don't think that's a bad thing, but I started asking myself, what if mentorship can transform both people in the relationship? What would that look like, right? Where both people are adding value, both people bring a different perspective. And so today, like when you ask in the future of work, what does mentorship look like? Today, when I think mentorship, I think, building transformational relationships instead of transactional. And because that's how you build meaningful connections. That's how you build and you're able to go well beyond just that one moment, that one time. So for me, and I don't know if you're familiar with Sarah Haggard.
No, I'm not. Share a little bit more about her.
Sarah lives in Seattle,
Oh,
and
actually, I do know who you're talking about.
I
Sarah
feel like you
Haggard.
know Sarah.
She's
Yes.
built a mentorship
Tribute.
platform, right?
Yeah.
Tribute. Yes, yes, I
Yeah.
know exactly who you're talking about.
So we met Sarah in a very roundabout way. It was very cool. And we actually visited her in Seattle when we went down. And
Wow.
a big part of what she believes is the importance of leading with shared life experiences.
Mm,
So with her app, like it is intentionally designed that, we're not prioritizing your role. We're not
mm,
prioritizing your position, but really, what have you gone through and experienced in your life
mm,
that people can connect with and resonate with? So I believe in that, and it's using technology as well. So it's an app that she's built with her team, and that's what I see the future of mentorship looking like. I see it where both people are able to pour into one another, where mentorship does not end at a specific date, but it's a relationship that you can build on if it feels right and it works. So yeah, that it's definitely changed even in this past month for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's continuous. I love that so much. I think that's so powerful. And I think what I love about what you touched on is the difference between transactional, reciprocal, and transformational relationships,
Mm,
right? And I put in the reciprocal because I think there are, there is reciprocal relationships are also continuous, but I love transformational. I haven't
interesting.
actually heard that one before. Transformational relationships where like you meet someone, they come into your life and they completely transform it and probably
Mm,
take you onto bigger and better planes. And I think that's so rare, right? You rarely meet people
mm,
who just come in and like it's like, wow, like thank you, where have you been all my life, right? Or
yeah.
you led me into this path, and there's only very few people like that you have in your life. So I think that's something that people should be taking notes on for sure. So I want to shout out to Ryan, who says that his team 100% wanted it, but only 20% actually show up to the sessions with the
Interesting.
doctor, and 2% only reached out to the doc for private meetings. He would love your take on it.
Understand why that's happening? Is that your question, Ryan?
Yeah.
Interesting. Huh. I wonder. I feel like there's so many things at play. I wonder if mental health, as much as we're talking about it more, I wonder if people still deem it as um, something
A
that's
stigma.
taboo to discuss, right? Taboo or a stigma in the workplace. Um, but the fact that you can reach out to them privately, I feel that takes away the burden of publicly displaying that you are acknowledging that you need help and support.
Hmm. No.
Um, I wonder. I'm curious. I have no idea. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I still think people are afraid to open up about their psychological and mental health. It's a stigma. It's a truly stigma because if you're working in a work environment that
Yeah.
only prioritizes efficiency and productivity, you opening up that you don't feel psychologically well, things are tough. It makes you being seen perceived weak, right? And I think it just goes more into what we talk about, creating a more inclusive and psychologically safe workspace where people can open up, right? Whether you're a man or a woman, LGBTQ
Yeah.
plus, like you can open up about that. It's not perceived as a detriment to your growth or your performance or your professional expertise. So I think that we just have to completely shift how the workplace rewards performance or what it means to be high performing. Does high performing mean that I'm spending hours and hours of my time doing work that is making me psychologically unwell? Or does it mean that I'm creating, that work life harmony and I'm upfront with my team lead, my division lead, our CEO on what's making me psychologically unwell, right? So, I think you see a lot in very masculine driven workplaces where you
Yeah.
always have to feel as if you have to be peak performing and very machoistic when you don't, right? And those type of workspaces are what some organizational psychologists call them very red workspaces,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
where it's always a matter of performance growth, driving increasing profit margins, all of that. And I don't think that's sustainable from an organizational standpoint. It's always a matter of finding that reasonable balance.
I think a lot of people operate in as highly functional and productive people, but holistically unhealthy. I think both can probably exist at the same time. I don't know, as mentioned, how sustainable that is. I don't think that's a long-term play. But I wonder. So Ryan's saying here makes me second guess my investment. I've allowed group sessions and private all free. There can also be that component of not necessarily performance being scrutinized, but
Yeah.
your ability to move up in an organization, be promoted. What
Yeah.
does that look like in terms of leadership and how they view employees as well?
Yeah.
So there's that privacy piece until it becomes, an accepted conversation that will always be at the back of people's minds for sure.
Yeah, I want to show love to Elijah. Hey, Elijah, what's up, man?
Hey.
And Tanya is saying there's a vulnerability component for sure as well. I think it's worth exploring how to make vulnerability okay. Perhaps through
Hmm.
case studies of people who have had that moment of needing to reach out. Familiarity makes people feel less vulnerable. So showcasing those moments, those pivots, I think it would be helpful, Ryan. What do you think, Naomi? I think that's a really powerful point, Tanya.
That is really powerful. Yeah. I wonder if, yeah, it's complex, but we must make it available. I completely agree. What is leadership's tone as well when introducing this? Ryan, are you the founder of the organization that you're speaking about?
Yeah, Ryan's saying, yeah, it's complex, but we must make it avail.
I agree.
Yeah,
I
it's
agree. I
true. It's
agree.
true. Shout out to Donna who's saying, give yourself permission to rest and take time for self-care. As an entrepreneur, wife, mother, and friend, I realize self-care is what sustains the real me. I schedule appointments with myself all the time. I love it. Shout out to you, Donna. Naomi, I'm sorry. What do you do for self-care? What's your self-care regimen look like?
I definitely schedule time for myself, for sure. I just recently made a post around, how we often say no to ourselves, or if we've scheduled time in our calendar, block time to read or just be alone and think. That because we're scheduling it with ourselves, we can say, okay, we can move it around, and not be as committed to those timestamps as we would meeting with other people. And so I think for me, taking the time that I set aside for myself seriously, and maybe I won't see the impact or the benefit in that particular moment, but long term, this is how I build a strong relationship with me, right? With me, and I take that relationship seriously. So yeah, time blocking. I set ritual, like morning and evening rituals. Like, as much as we can't control what will happen throughout the day, I think the way that we start our day and the way that we end our day is really, really important, and something that I take really seriously, for sure.
Yeah. And I love how you mentioned rituals. We are, as human beings, we're highly ritualistic. Rituals really help us, get a great mental model of what our day is going to look like and help us get into a groove. So rituals are so important. And even for, me as a creative, I'm always thinking
Yeah.
about my rituals are weird. Like I just like before I like start designing or doing anything,
Yeah.
I need a spark. Like I need either to listen to somebody
Mm,
or I just have to drink something like water and I just get in the zone, right? I have to kind of
mm,
visualize what I want to build. And it's weird as a creative, you're always getting inspiration from all kinds of different places. So it's
yeah.
like your groove is just it's a random, but then when you're in focus mode and you just want to
Yeah.
create and you're kind of like thinking through roles, you're thinking through situations, you're thinking through concepts, you get lost in that moment, right? So it's
Powerful.
like, so your ritual is just it's almost anything that kind of like gives you that traction to focus, and then you get in that zone, and then when people distract you, you're like, oh my god, I'm so distracted.
Okay, so Tim, do you schedule your creative times when you know that you're most productive or creative?
I actually don't. I think it happens. I think I'm most creative at night for sure, but I'm
Yeah.
also most creative right after I've just like listened to an audiobook or read
Yeah.
something or had a really stimulating conversation.
Hmm.
Right? It's like if someone just like gave me 3 ideas, I'll go right
You're
back
like,
into
I'm
the
ready to
drawing
run
board.
with it.
Yeah, I'm ready to
Yeah.
run with this and see how we can conceptualize this and how it makes sense for maybe a problem we want to solve. So for me, it's like there's always something that stimulates the creativity. And I think
Hmm.
the best way to maintain creativity and be creative is like having great conversations like the one that we're having. I
Agreed.
think one of the things that kind of concerns me about this whole remote work craze is that we're completely over optimizing around what remote work cannot do. Like it actually
Yeah.
doesn't allow creativity to be nurtured in this very organic way because you're always just seeing people through a screen. Like you're not
Spontaneous
what
conversation.
yeah, that's how like the best creativity emerges. And that's actually even one reason why we at Guide, we really want to make sure that when we think about our experience design team and our product team, that that they're, a few of those people are remotely co-located, right? Even though we're still embracing virtual work, like you still want to create some sort of cohesion within a distributed
Mm,
workforce model. You don't want to be fully remote because I don't believe you can get the best ideas to rise to the
mm,
top, and that community component. So you want to find like the healthy harmony. So I get concerned when I see a lot of companies saying we're completely going remote because
100%.
they're
Yeah.
gonna take away the physical component and the community angle for their workforce. What are your thoughts on that, Naomi?
Even as I think about my own work, because it's been about since March, it's been about 2 or 3 months since we've been
Yeah,
fully remote. And before this change, my organization actually wasn't equipped for us to work from home fully. I didn't have a laptop or a cell phone. And so that transition happened, and it happened really quickly,
yeah,
even after conversations months prior, that having that flexibility. So when I physically can't come into the office, I can still work. And so for me, I do miss that community aspect. And I feel like if
yeah,
we end up going 100% remote after things start to open up, I would want to find a co working space that I can work out of.
yeah.
Um, Maybe 2 times or 3 times a week, where that connection is still available. Because you're right, the spontaneous conversations, the conversations that we've had in the kitchen or in passing or grabbing coffee with people, there was so much room for the unexpected to happen.
Hmm.
And now everything's scheduled, right?
Yeah,
Everything is
yeah.
scheduled, and it's a timestamp on my calendar, which removes a lot of that for sure. Yeah.
It's so
What do you
true.
guys
It's so
what are you
true.
thinking for Guide after things start to open up? What are
You
you
know,
thinking?
I think we're definitely gonna have a headquarters in Oakland, and we're gonna have bring on a few people in that headquarters, and
Mhm.
we do have people who we're already working with in terms of engineering, in international locations such as Ukraine as well as India. So I think you can it's just having a distributed work model and making sure that you have the framework in place so it can scale, right? And
Mhm.
you don't have to over policy everything. I think
Yep.
there's a lot of companies, it's all about policies, 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 policies. There's like a document full of policies. But what we really embrace with Guide is like work from anywhere,
Mm.
right? Work from anywhere. There are certain roles that we want you to be co-located, but it could be we're in Oakland and we only go into the office when we want to, right? Or we want to see each other and have that team camaraderie. So I
Yeah.
think every company has to think about what will work best for your company's DNA and culture.
Mhm. Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So shout out to Ryan who's saying, "Hey Donna, you rule. Adult education, you rule." Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
Ryan
credit for
is like,
title.
"You rule." Thanks for the positivity. Shout out to Ryan. They're making friends. They're being best friends in the comments. So Naomi, as we cap things off, there's one last question I have for you that I think is really, really powerful. How do you believe workers can create fulfillment in their careers?
Mhm. This is the question that I wanted to, and almost became relentless in
Yeah.
asking people through the podcast. What does that look like for you? Is it something that you create? Is it something that you search for and you're finding? And I think we've even had a lot of conversations around this too. And I do not believe that it's something that is external and something that you need to search for.
Yeah.
It's so much of it is looking within and asking yourself questions, to seek greater awareness of, what are your values,
Hmm.
what does light you up, right? And I think for me, some of those questions were around the narrative about myself that I was carrying,
Yeah.
that was so influenced by everyone around me. And I mean, we're essentially programmed and trained to think a certain way, from a very early age. And I think that strips away our authenticity. It strips
Hmm.
away, that connection that we have with our spirit, right? And so
Yeah.
for me, the probably the most important question that I've asked myself in around creating fulfillment is, what does it mean, not to carry the narrative that serve me to get to this point, but probably won't take me to the next level,
I love
right?
that. Yeah.
And I always think about, even on our podcast episode, you talked about being in, like, setting that time to go to the library and
Yeah.
ask yourself all of the difficult
Yeah.
questions, right?
Yeah.
And I see that as a really important practice, to check in with yourself and
Mm,
remove distraction and just say, what do these questions mean to me? And so when it comes to creating fulfillment in your career, it always comes back to self. It always comes back to asking those difficult questions. Why are you starting that business? Why are you in this industry? What problems do you not want to give up on?
yeah.
And essentially, what do you believe in? What do you believe in strongly that you will do anything to keep providing value to and to keep speaking to? So,
Man, that's so powerful, Naomi. And I think people forget to do it. People forget to check in with themselves, right? It
mm,
because you're so busy doing so much for others sometimes that you
hmm
completely forget. Like you become robotic and just
hmm
doing things that don't matter and actually don't fill your cup, as you mentioned earlier.
The one point that I'd really like to add, and talk about, is, like, when we talked about time stamping earlier and time blocking and setting
Yeah.
those rituals. I think it's not necessarily about your calendar and at what times you're doing things, but it's about how you honor what you say you're going to do for yourself. It's about
Mm,
showing up for yourself too. And I think this, sometimes, at least for me, I can be dismissive of what I need in this moment because I'm thinking about how I can cater to all of these different factors. And
mm.
that, to me, isn't building sustainably, right?
I love it. I love it. So shout out to Sage, Mr. Bailey. What's up, man? Nothing compares to a good book or conversation that makes you want to optimize yourself.
Mm,
Powerful, Sage. Powerful, man. So Shalika is saying, yes, work in the office 2 days per week is what her company is potentially shifting to, or what she's
love it.
experienced. Yeah, so that's awesome. That's awesome. And dear LinkedIn user that has no name, yes, Oakland is where we are located. Guide is in Oakland. I am in Oakland. That's where I reside. So that's where our headquarters is, and that's where we're building our team. So shout out to you for asking that questions. With that said, Naomi, where can the people follow you and learn more about your work?
Yeah, so I have a website where I share all of the podcast episodes and my guest stories at naomihaile.com. And I also started a Substack newsletter. Is anyone on Substack here? I want it. It's such a it's such a cool tool, to make all your newsletter postings available also on their site. So I started a Substack newsletter, The Power of Why
Woo.
/substack.com. So I plan on definitely being more active in those avenues. And if you want to connect with me on Instagram, it's Naomi A. Haile. So I look forward to seeing you
Yay.
all there.
Make sure to connect with her on Instagram and LinkedIn. She's super active there. Naomi, thank you so much for sharing all of your amazing wisdom with the guide community and being on the show today. We should have you on for a future episode.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Tim, for continuing to show up and just highlighting so many different people. I've learned so much from you over these past few years. So thanks for being you, Tim. I really appreciate it.
Naomi, thank you so much. I appreciate you. Talk to you soon.
Bye. Bye,
Bye,
everyone.
y'all. All right, y'all. If you enjoyed that episode, make sure that you go ahead and check us out at UTFOW.com if you're interested in being a future guest or know someone that should be a future guest on a future episode. And also make sure to let me know if you're interested in sponsoring at UTFOW.com. In addition, we are going to be launching our beta for Guide soon. So if you're interested in being a creator or bringing Guide into your corporation, your business, your enterprise, make sure you check us out and be a part of our early beta access at guideapp.co. Guideapp.co is where you can sign up for early access. With that said, peace, love, and stay safe with all of the rioting and craziness going on in the world. Take care of yourself and continue to build something that you love. All right, y'all. Peace.